Night doesn't fall here. It gathers, slow as incense, sure as tide. Before the mountain had a name and before the sky learned thunder, the world was a wide, breathing hush they called the open, not a place, not yet, a possibility. In that soft, unclaimed vastness, things began to speak themselves into shape. Depth opened underfoot. And the word for that was the deep. A breath like pale fire drifted above, and the word for that was bright air. Between these two, the first ground lifted. Not a hill, not a peak, but an understanding that something could hold. Call that ground the one who bears, earth with a mind. She pressed her back against the silence and made room. Above her, a vault unfurled, sky, glittering and newly certain. Where edge met edge, a blue body turned and turned. Its name was Ocean, generous and restless, learning the alphabet of shores. From this trio, earth, sky and ocean, time finally had a surface to touch. Mountains lifted like slow thoughts, valleys cooled, caves remembered. The night found its confidence and wore it as velvet. Day answered in clear, clean gold. Dark and light began a courteous exchange that has not failed since. But every roof learns weight, and every weight eventually asks who put it there. Sky, pleased with his own span, pushed and pushed, a ceiling pressed too close to the breathing floor. Earth endured with a patience that should have made the sky wiser. It did not. So Earth, for whom endurance includes invention, grew a plan the way stone grows a seam. She shaped resolve into a crescent blade and gave it to a will bold enough to use it. There was a night of unravelling. No gore, only a rule interrupted. The old order separated from the new with a single irreversible stroke. Sky lifted, finally generous with distance. Stars took their stations with relief. After that, names multiplied like ripples. Rivers walked down from snow. Winds learned directions and kept them. The salt water accepted moonlight as if it had always been married to it. A family of immense minds gathered. The old ones, their thoughts as slow and deep as winter. They were steady as anchors, strong as tide, and very nearly enough. But time had more curves to draw. Among the old ones was one whose hunger measured the horizon and found it small. He took the throne by taking it away from the one who would never have ceded it. He counted success as safety and safety as swallowing. The world held its breath. On the far edge of that fear, a different kind of nerve woke. Not louder, only truer. A plan passed from palm to palm, palm of earth, palm of loyalty, palm of desperate love, and found its way into a cradle hidden in mountain and perfume. The story that followed belongs to oaths kept in silence and to a promise smuggled past suspicion. On a small island tight with green, the sea pretending to be a lullaby, a presence grew in secrecy, fed by kindness and the tender conspiracy of bees and stone. He learned to listen before he learned to command. He learned to throw before he learned to boast. He learned a truth before he learned his name, that power without measure is only noise. When he finally stood up straight and the world could no longer pretend not to see him, Storm took a step closer to voice. He went to those whom fear had pushed into corners, the Brightforge artisans who can turn intent into weapon, and the 100 strong who can hold the line when lines have to be held forever. Their gifts fit his hands because they had been waiting for a grip that wouldn't drop them. From the forge, 3 bolts, each the cleanest version of an answer. From the 100, a wall that can move, a gate that can think. War is a teacher that charges too much. The old and the new struck each other across valleys and sea lanes. Mountains remembered songs they had hoped never to hear again. For 10 years, 10 deliberate winters of learning, throw met throw, oath met echo, The world did not break. It clarified. On the last day, thunder did not argue. It stated. The old ones bowed into memory without shame, their age repurposed as foundation. The new king climbed the height that would be called Olympus, because a height must be named when it becomes more than rock. Up there, wind gets its instructions. Up there, cloud learns how far it is allowed to go. The one who set law in the sky sat, not to rest, but to begin. He took counsel because true rule starts by listening. Beside him, the straight-minded, law in shape, unrolled the map of what ought to be. Measures were weighed, not how to punish first, but how to keep from needing to. To the river that never lies, he entrusted oath. To the three who spin, measure, and cut, he entrusted the length of stories and the decency of ends. To the quiet, stern one who balances the scale you can't see, he entrusted consequence. Division came next, not of loyalty, but of task. Sea is a mind that must be partnered with firmness, so the deep was signed over to a hand that respects both wave and harbour. Underworld is a garden turned inward, honest as ledger, so the below was given to the one who keeps accounts the sun cannot read. The wide breathing middle, the domain of weather, word and verdict, remained here under the thunderer's eye. 3 powers, 1 table, a single understanding, no realm survives if any realm forgets the others exist. Order took muscle and manners both. Guest right became law rather than courtesy. The door that opens to a stranger became a sacred hinge. Plunder, newly named, learned to fear a sentence that would find it even in palaces. Judges who sold outcomes discovered that the sky knows numbers and will show its math. A cup raised in a lie found its wine turning sour halfway to the lip. Poets woke with the right lines in their mouths, because inspiration now had an office and a schedule. Truth grew a backbone, kindness grew a procedure. The new king's signature lived in the clean strike of lightning and in something quieter. Restraint. He could have made the world small, he chose circumference. He could have carried thunder everywhere. He chose to carry it only where it repaired. He could have been spectacle, he chose to be law. It helped that the bright city around him filled with minds equal to the weather. Craft set up an anvil and welcomed stubborn metal. Wisdom leaned over plans and added the line that keeps beauty from collapsing. Harvest walked down the hill with bread and patience. Song tuned the air so that speech would land where it meant to. Boundary stood just outside the gate with a spear that was more promise than threat. From that circle of competence, the mountain taught the villages below and the ships beyond the horizon how to keep themselves from burning. A pact emerged. The sacred river listens, swear by it sparingly. The household flame is not to be neglected. Life depends on small constancies more than on large victories. The wide road belongs to all. Treat it as if your own mother had to walk it at dusk. In the square speak, in the temple hush. In the field share water. If you break these, do not blame fate, blame choice. Those who prefer ruin to rule found less room to work. Yet mercy was not evicted. When anger came to the threshold with a story that rang true, the door did not slam. The storm set down its spear, heard the case, and often commuted the sentence, turning rage into service. The ancient night forces who had hunted without appeal were offered new employment, not to shred but to guard. They accepted, learned robes, and kept decorum, and their new name, Kindly Ones, was not a joke. Even vengeance can be civilized when justice is reliable. And still, the sky watched itself. Power has a habit of rewriting its own rules while pretending it hasn't. So the Thunderer built in safeguards against himself. He made a habit of binding promises to the unbreakable river. He let counsel cross him in public. He allowed the sharp voice to speak without lightning striking them down. Because a city that confuses reverence with silence starves its own honesty. He visited thresholds in plain sandals to test whether hospitality was a value or a costume. He lifted, he withheld, he revised. Above all, he kept the chair a chair, a place to work, not a theatre throne. Below, mortals felt the weather change. Markets squared themselves. Oaths stopped being decorations and started being contracts. In little houses behind fig trees, people set stools for travellers because it felt good and because the sky took attendance. On coasts where gulls write their own scriptures, fishermen tossed a pinch of first catch back to the tide and meant it. Far inland, where earth opens her ribs for barley, farmers poured a first cup to the unseen and didn't pretend they were doing the gods a favour. Gratitude is instruction, not bribe. Not every day was bright. Temptation still wore its perfume. Pride still tried to reorganize the map around its own name. But when storms rolled in, and storms do, there was sense even in the thunder. The flash that split the oak did not burn the valley. It stated a boundary. The bolt that shattered a spear by the judge's feet did not start a war. It ended a crooked hearing. When ruin gathered its court in secret rooms, weather learned the address and arrived early. On quiet nights, the city on the mountain breathed like a living hearth. Torches traced slow arcs up the stairs, and voices that knew each other's strengths passed in the cool. In halls of polished stone, the one who signed the sky made time for listening. Harbour captains with salt in their beards, midwives with the names of safe births, smiths whose hands could smell a flaw in iron, singers who knew where the mind wants to cry and where it wants to stand. Each left with a small adjustment granted, a better current, a calmer hour, a phrase that recognized their craft, a silence that protected their grief. Law became not an abstraction, but a neighbour. This is the beginning of the Pantheon's long night watch. Not a family gathered around a stormy table, but a working council, each mind holding a piece of survival and laying it down exactly where it keeps the rest from slipping. At the centre sits the one whose thunder is grammar. He is not the sky, he is the sky's conscience. He is not the storm, he is the decision about when storms are allowed. He is not power, he is permission, granted to the world to continue. If sleep is a kind of trust, then let this be your reassurance as the room dims. Above the roofs and hills, there is an order that prefers restraint to spectacle, measure to noise, mercy to melodrama. The sea will argue and the earth will groan and ambition will sometimes mispronounce its own name. But the chair on the height is occupied by a will that chooses limits and enforces them with a light you can count on. Breathe in the calm that kind of governance gives off. Breathe out the old story that thunder means caprice. In the chapters to come, the circle will widen, minds of fire and forge, of wisdom and warcraft, of hearth and harvest, of art and memory, of boundary and below. Each will step forward and say, "Here is how I keep you," and the mountain will nod. For tonight, the introduction is enough. The height claimed, the law seated, the river sworn by, the sea acknowledged, the underworld respected. Stars wheel as if they have been told a gentle secret. The world sleeps inside it, so can you. The circle widens around the high chair, and new offices take their places, quiet powers that turn a verdict into a way to live. The air on the mountain cools, torches lean and steady themselves. Voices lower, so listening can work. At the edge of the council, a presence steps forward. Not with thunder, but with a standard held high. She measures rooms by their vows, weights by their fair use, faces by the patience they keep. Call her queen by function rather than ornament. Where she walks, pomp loses its appetite and dignity turns practical. She keeps watch over agreements, the ones spoken under garlands and the ones kept at a table long after the garlands are dry. She does not confuse ceremony with fidelity. In her precincts, spectacle is audited and affection made into policy, gifts recorded, expectations written down, quarrels given a place to end without scorched earth. When households braid two names into one weather, she instructs the sky to bless them with ordinary days, exactly the right miracle. She is jealous, yes, but not of gossip. She guards integrity, the promise that a door will be a door and not a revolving stage, the assurance that a public oath will not be eaten in private. Cities ask her to lend spine to their institutions. In stone courtyards ringed with columns, she receives sacrifices as receipts more than flattery, proof that those who rule remember the difference between crown and service. Her birds open their eyes like jewelled shutters. Her attendants carry peacock feathers that catch light the way a good memory catches truth. Offer her smoke, and she returns routine. Calendars that hold, festival that arrive on time, magistrates who do not sell verdicts. Ask for fury, and she offers something more durable, endurance sharpened into standards. Ask for spectacle, and she answers with a look that makes spectacle behave. Near her seat, another fire burns lower and closer, soft as breath. It is not a god's face, it is the oldest presence in any room, a circle of coals that keep going because someone keeps going. This is the hearth, tended by the one who never leaves the centre, because leaving would betray the idea she does not need a throne. Her power is the invitation that outlasts storms. Step in, warm your hands, eat what we have, we are a we again. She is first and last to be honoured, first flame lit at rites, last ember banked when the night is done. Because without her, no beginning begins and no ending finishes gently. Across cities, she is given a public hearth the way a city gives itself a heart. Travellers are fed there, ambassadors take the same fire home to prove friendship isn't a speech. When a colony is planted on a new shore, a small coal from the mother city rides in a clay jar and starts the future with continuity. She protects those who choose to tend rather than conquer, who keep bread perfect and doors unlocked, who know a kettle song better than a trumpet's. She is the quiet consensus that prevents the world from becoming merely an argument conducted at volume. If the hearth keeps a room alive hour by hour, the field keeps a year alive season by season. From the slope where barley looks like sunlight training itself, a taller figure walks the mountain steps. She holds a sheaf that contains not just grain but repetition, the brave idea that tomorrow should repeat on purpose and improve a little. She is the patience in furrow and the right tiredness at dusk. Where she smiles, threshing floors become dance floors. Where she frowns, storage jars go thin. She taught mortals to ask bread of earth without flattery, and to return thanks without calculation. She instructs hands in the grammar of tools, how a sickle cuts when you let it, how a millstone sings when fed evenly, how to store enough for lean months with pride rather than fear. Her deepest work is a story walked, not told, a descent and a return that taught the planet how to breathe. Once, loss turned the fields to iron, lamps burned at noon, songs broke in the throat. The world learned through her grief and her bargaining the law we call season. For a portion of the year, the ground rests with its hands folded, remembering. For the rest, it opens the palm. We mark the turning with torches and a cup of barley and a secret that is not information but posture. Plant even when you hurt. Harvest without arrogance. Share because famine takes bad notes of selfishness and reads them back later. She also taught to restraint at the table where livestock and appetite meet. Not every shining thing is yours. Not every hunger deserves quick permission. There is a proper hour to eat, a proper field to cut, a proper number of hooves for a hillside to carry. Break these and the sun will tell on you in weather. Keep them and you will sleep cleanly and feed strangers without counting. Together, the Queen of Vows, the Keeper of Flame, and the Giver of Grain write the inner law of a civilization. One binds promise into custom, one shelters promise from weather, one feeds promise until it becomes tradition. Under their governance, a household is not a building but a discipline. Lamps trimmed, doors remembered, words chosen to last. Under their protection, cities become more than walls. They become habits. The square fills and empties without a riot. The well gets lined in stone, bread changes hands without humiliation. The gods of thunder and sea make spectacular noises, but without these three, the noises would never become culture. They also keep watch over hospitality, the oldest treaty. Guest and host are titles that should pass between strangers like a bowl of water between hands, steady, unspilled. The queen inspects the handshake. The hearth sets another place with no drama. The field forgives a loaf taken when someone arrives between markets. The sky keeps count, but the count is not a trap. It is accounting, a way to make sure graciousness is not bankrupted by users, and that caution does not devour kindness. Their symbols are practical. For the queen, a sceptre that refuses to lie. A diadem that is more ledger than jewel, the iris, whose arc reminds rulers to walk in curves, not straight lines. For the hearth, a torch you can carry without setting your sleeve on fire, a small tripod whose legs stand even on a floor that is not perfect, a handful of clean ash that marks the forehead into belonging. For the field, a sheaf, of course, bound with honest twine, a winnowing fan that chooses grain from chaff without contempt, a key to the granary that opens even when the steward is tired. Their festivals are the right size for sleep. The Queen's Day brings processions that practice balance rather than boastfulness. Couples exchange wreaths under canopies woven with jokes and advice. Elders sit like libraries you can visit. The hearth's feast is every evening done well. Lids lifted, soup tasted, a plate set aside for the latecomer, an extra blanket unfolded without comment. The field celebration happens twice, at planting with hope words, at harvest with gratitude words, torches moving along paths like a kind rumour. In the Great Council they do not shout. The Queen asks simple questions that make courts better. Who benefits? Who speaks for the absent? Who signs when the ceremony is over? The hearth interrupts the argument with a tray, drink, bread, a chance for tempers to lower as blood sugars rise. The field brings a small bag of grain and pours a few kernels on the table to remind everyone what arguments are for. Even the thunderer concedes that order without warmth becomes cruelty. Warmth without order becomes waste, abundance without gratitude becomes decay. Down in the mortal world, these three find 1,000 ways to incarnate. A potter's kiln that fires cleanly because patience timed the venting, hers. A registry where names are written correctly and kept safe from rain, hers. A neighbourhood oven where doughs arrive with different histories and leave as one aroma, hers. A market inspector who refuses a bribe because her aunt would hear about it, hers. A farmer who leaves the last row for gleaners and sleeps better than his richer neighbour, hers. A marriage that finds balance after the arguments stop performing and start listening, hers. A meal in a house that isn't yours that feels like it might be someday, hers. They do not exile severity. The Queen can be hard when promises are treated like costumes. The hearth can go cold if ingratitude makes itself a tenant. The field can go brown when contempt for cycles replaces respect. But even in correction, their aim is repair. They discipline so that tomorrow remains possible. They do not do revenge. They do continuity. Their myths hum under our systems, whether we spell their names or not. Every courthouse with a roofline that insists on symmetry remembers her. Every city hall that includes a public fireplace or its modern equivalent, an open lobby where anyone can sit out the weather without expense, remembers her. Every statute code about weights and measures, every seed library, every peasant calendar carved with moons and leaves remembers her. In these, Olympus isn't far away, it's functional. If you walk late through a quiet town and peer in at lit windows, you can watch them work. In a back kitchen, someone rewrites a family rule so it hurts less. Queen at the elbow. In a living room, someone adds a second chair near the radiator without comment. Hearth settling in. In a shed, someone hangs tools where they belong and sweeps the floor because mice respect clean order. Field nodding. Small salvations repeated are how empires outlast emperors. Above, the mountain approves without applause. The thunderer keeps his distance the way a good executive does when competent departments are performing. He knows better than to upstage the disciplines that keep him from becoming mere weather. He leans on counsel and watches balance like a hawk that hunts laziness instead of rabbits. So, if sleep asks for proof that the world is tended while you're gone, take this chapter as a whispered inventory. Vows have a guardian who does not fatigue. Flame has a steward who does not wander. Grain has a teacher who does not rush. The chair on the height remembers why it is a chair, because these three keep the legs under it true. Breathe with them. In on the promise, out on the practice. In on the warmth, out on the sharing. In on the sowing, out on the storing. Let the night hold your own small house. The way the mountain holds the city. Steadily, competently, without spectacle. The rest of the circle waits its turn. Sea and storm, mind and craft, music and wildness, commerce and travel, boundary and below. But first, let the vow stand, the flame keep, the field promise. Now the pillow can take your weight without learning a lesson it didn't ask for. The circle of order widens again, away from vows and flame and furrow toward the bright instruments of mind, the stubborn mercy of craft, the pulse that draws bodies into covenant, and the heat that keeps borders from dissolving. The mountain's air turns clean as iron kissed by rain. Torches hum low. A different light arrives, not thunderlight, but the kind you can read by. From the high seat of decision, a figure steps forward in armour that sounds like thought before it sounds like war. Her eyes hold the colour of a new idea. No trumpet announces her. An owl's quiet does. She does not descend, she appears, complete, exact, as if a mind had opened and a city walked out. Where she goes, panic loses its vocabulary. Streets learn right angles. Spears remember, they are for protection before they remember they are for pride. She does not despise battle, she despises waste. She hates the noise of unjust victory and the silence of cowardice equally. In courts, she is the long breath taken before sentence. In workshops, she is the straight edge held to a plan. In councils under plane trees and on walls where dawn paints the harbour pink, she asks the same questions in the same tone. What are we building? Who is this for? Where does it break in bad weather? When someone mistakes cleverness for wisdom, she sets an olive branch on the table and waits until they remember hunger. She teaches weaving with the same gravity she brings to tactics, because a loom is a battlefield you can sleep under later. Her contest with a brilliant weaver who forgot respect ends not in screaming, but in a caution written in silk. Skill without measure eats its maker. When cities call her, she arrives with a map and a modest smile. She does not promise invincibility, she promises coherence. Olive groves spring up where she lingers, trees that write patience into the soil. Blackwater takes on a sheen of order as oars begin to know each other's rhythm. Helmets gleam not to boast, but to keep heads inside good plans. On her festivals, girls and men both carry long-stemmed branches and walk together in a slow river of feet, wreathing statues with thread they spun themselves. She does not need incense to believe in you. She needs you to put the right stone in the right place. At the mountain's other shoulder, a deeper glow beats in time with the earth. A door opens and heat breathes out like an oath kept. The one at the anvil doesn't hurry. He lives where rock softens and stubbornness can be persuaded into usefulness. His hands are scarred into knowledge. His limp is a kind of signature. Where others see raw, he sees eventual. He loves materials that try to misbehave because they teach him how to listen more carefully. His companions are simple, bellows that attay, tongues that grip without cruelty, hammers that know when to stop. From his forge come answers that look like marvels because the trust has been built into them atom by atom. Doors that open only for the rightful, chairs that learn good posture from their sitters and repay it, tripods that walk with dignity to where they are needed and then stand still. He makes armour that is not merely protection, but a story hammered into metal, cities, stars, harvest, dance, so that the wearer remembers the world he serves. When rage and beauty tried to turn a bed into a stage, he set a net so fine even pride could not see it, and invited laughter to judge them both. His punishments do not humiliate, they educate. He is patient with fools and impatient with liars. He welcomes those who cannot find a place to stand elsewhere and gives them work that makes their names clean again. He laughs rarely, and when he does, the workshop joins in because the laugh means the thing fits. When he leaves his bench, it is usually for a debt he intends to pay in full, a favour to a river, a hinge for a gate that has suffered, a clasp for a goddess's robe that keeps dignity where it belongs. His temples look like foundries with good ventilation. His priests are people with burns that have healed into competence. Between mind and metal, a softer power moves, no less exacting, no less dangerous. She rises as if the sea had decided to turn music into a body. Foam writes light on her skin. Sand turns to mirror where she steps. Flowers that were fine become finer. Arguments that were brittle become flexible. She does not need a crown. A smile is infrastructure. When she's pleased with a city, she doesn't send thunder. She makes its markets fragrant and honest. When she blesses a house, rotations of affection, kiss, word, touch, quiet, become grammar, not accident. She is not trivial. She is power that chooses blush over bruise, command over clamour. She gilds agreements after the Queen of Vows signs them, making duty feel like desire and desire remember its duty. She magnifies courtesy until it becomes magnetism. When she walks into a room where cruelty has been pretending to be a game, she tilts a mirror and the game dissolves for lack of self-respect. The sea remembers her first. Sailors pour a little fresh water over the side with a grin, and ships arrive safer for it. In her precinct, dancers rehearse empathy with their feet. Craftspeople carve softness into stone and make columns that do not strain to carry weight. She can punish. When arrogance mocks the craft that raised it, she arranges for a net to fall. When love is used as a knife, she bribes time to turn it dull. When lust mistakes possession for devotion, she hands fidelity back its voice and watches silence do her work. But her favourite victories are domestic and municipal. 2 hands, once clumsy, find a new rhythm. 2 streets, once strangers, end in a square that becomes a festival every evening without being told. Heat of a different sort prowls at the circle's edge, not skulking, not apologising. He is the red in iron, the drum before orders, the ache in the jaw after clenching too long. He enters rooms like weather that hasn't learned to share. He's honest about what he is, the urgency that sprints before reason, the force that breaks sieges when speeches fail, the appetite for the clean answer of strength. In his best moments, he stands where the wall is crumbling and puts his back to it until the city can breathe. In his worst, he rides through wheat and calls it glory, and he is necessary and must be supervised. The mind in the helmet directs him. The maker at the anvil arms him. The sea quenches him. The Queen of Vows gives him a list. The hearth bans him except in emergencies. The harvest warns him what a burned field costs. The goddess of attraction bribes him into gentleness or catches him when he forgets what promises weigh. When he learns to take an order, soldiers return alive and bring stories, not excuses. When he refuses, mothers' names become curses. We won't use that word. We keep the room kind. And the gods turn their faces away until he remembers shame. He doesn't do subtle. That is fine. Others do. He does the thing that feels like relief when the spear line forms at dusk and you wish for a bigger arm to place next to yours. Temples suit him poorly. Training grounds suit him perfectly. Priests who serve him best are instructors who know when to stop a drill before bones splinter. If you set him tasks that honour communities rather than egos, he will surprise you with loyalty. If you flatter him, he becomes the worst version of himself and the most expensive god to appease. Watch how the four of them talk when the mountain lowers its voice. She of the bright helm asks where the line should be drawn. He of the anvil answers with a gate that opens for friends and becomes iron for enemies. She of foam and fragrance steps between victory and revenge, and asks those who have won to look into a bowl of water until their face is calm. The red one snorts and accepts a cup anyway, because thirst is an argument he understands. Strategy names the target, craft builds the tool, desire persuades the city to endure the cost without hating itself. Force keeps the promise when the promise is surrounded. Their festivals teach without posters. In her name, youths and elders step into a ring, not to hurt, but to prove they have learned control. Winners walk out slower than they went in. In his, the forge doors open, you can feel the heat on your face from the street. A new hinge is dedicated with a joke about doors that never line up. A lame boy, no, not that word, let's say a walker who moves differently, beams because a handle fits his hand exactly. In hers, women pin their hair not to impress but to honour the art of arrangement. Men learn that a scent on the wrist can save a dinner from turning into a quarrel. Lovers practice staying rather than arriving. In the red ones, veterans drink water first, then wine, and a city names its dead without lying about why. Wreaths go to those who kept the peace with their presence. Down among us, their work is everywhere you sleep through and rely on. A mason rechecks plumb at dusk and shaves a stone because perfect is kinder than an easy. Anvil's blessing. A planner moves a road 5 paces so a spring stays clean. Helmets whisper. A baker scores loaves with a flourish you can't taste but somehow love. Foams smile. A guard chooses de-escalation twice before choosing not to. Red one leashed. Lovers argue without knives, then touch foreheads, both winning. 3 gods applauding and 1 god rolling his eyes and pretending he doesn't care. They are not afraid of each other anymore. Once, a net taught 2 of them not to confuse appetite with immortality. Once, a chair taught a proud throne not to sit without thinking. Once, a contest taught an artist that hands can be wilder than wisdom. Those lessons hold. The mountain is a workplace, not a soap opera, when it's healthy. Even their stories of stumble have been edited into policies. Symbols hang from them the way tools hang from a belt. Her owl and olive, his hammer and tong, her shell and rose, his spear and crested helm. Take care. None of these are decoration. The owl means look twice before acting. The olive means invest in slow miracles. The hammer means persistence will outlast despair. The tongs mean grip, don't crush. The shell means beauty shields better than bragging. The rose means softness can argue and win. The spear means only forward for the right reasons. The crest means carry your courage where others can see it and borrow. You can visit them without knowing you're visiting. Sit with a blueprint and delete a flourish that breaks structure. You just nodded to the bright-eyed one. Return to a task tomorrow that defeated you today. You just shook the smith's hand. Choose a phrase that turns a fight into a conversation. You just let the sea-born one thread a ribbon through your day. Refuse a cheap victory because your neighbours would pay for it. You just saluted the hot-blooded one and he, against type, saluted back. When the mountain cools at midnight, They keep working in their ways. The strategist stitches errors into lessons. The smith banks coals so morning won't start from nothing. The goddess of attraction walks the colonnade and checks on couples who didn't finish a sentence. She mends a few. The spearman dreams of battle lines and wakes with a thought he didn't expect. Maybe courage tomorrow looks like not drawing steel. They are not abstractions, they are verbs. If you need reassurance before you sleep, the world does not rely on thunder alone. It relies on thought that refuses panic, hands that refuse surrender, tenderness that refuses contempt, and force that refuses vanity. Where these four stand shoulder to shoulder, nations wake sane. Where one is missing, noise fills the gap and calls itself fate. Tonight, they are present. The loom is threaded and unknotted. The forge is warm, but c'est pourrir. The square smells like citrus and bread instead of smoke. The barracks are quiet, except for a soft snore from someone who kept a gate for you. Rest. The next turning will bring the sea's old temper and the bright twins who steal the afternoon. Music and medicine, hunt and moonlight. Then the quick-foot messenger who keeps cities from forgetting each other. And finally the keeper of the cool earth under everything. For now, let strategy slow your breathing. Let craft steady your bones. Let affection soften your jaw. Let strength lie down. The mountain nods. The night approves. The mountain exhales, and the council turns toward older weather. The deep mind that moves under roots and rumours, and the clear brightness that stitches noon to night with measure. The air tastes of salt, bronze smells like sun. From the rim of cloud a stride-like tide approaches. He does not hurry, harbours learn from him. Where he stands, cliffs remember their posture and beaches listen. Trident in hand, not a trophy, a tool, he draws borders between surge and shore. Call him the sea's temper and its treaty at once. Ships know his moods the way oars know rhythm. Favour arrives as a steady fetch of wind, a swell that lifts without lying, a current that keeps you close to the line you planned. Anger arrives as instruction, white water stacked like arguments, a shout in the rigging that makes even boastful crews bow. He governs more than salt. Springs bursting from rock answer to his voice, and deep lakes carry his reflection politely. The ground remembers that it used to be seabed. When it forgets, he reminds it with a quiet shiver that rearranges stone into honesty. Horse and wave share his signature. Speed, harness to grace. And cities that live by the coast borrow his discipline. Docks square, ropes mended, lamps lit at sensible intervals, pilots sworn to say safe only when safe is true. Offerings to him are practical. First fish returned with a nod. Garlands hung on a bollard. A broken spar carried home and burned to tell the neighbourhood that the sea got its due and no more. He pays back with working weather. He also keeps accounts. Nets thrown where spawning should be left alone stop coming back heavy. Salvagers who steal under false distress find their luck unplatted over time. His mercy is real. Many a storm has ended with a sudden window towards shelter, but it is never sloppy. He likes a coastline that minds itself. Turn inland with the light that lets sailors read a chart and physicians read a pulse. He arrives not as blaze but as clarity, a gold that has learned restraint. Lyre in one hand, bow in the other, he keeps time for two worlds at once. When he speaks, mountains send the word along their ridges without distorting it. When he plays, a city breathes together. When he aims, error learns to move. He is the grammar of measures, strings tuned to temper, beams set at right angle, verses that balance breath and thought. In halls where decisions are written, he lends tone that discourages shouting. In places of healing he makes silence useful. His arrows are metaphors the body understands, swift corrections that shorten fevers, Warnings you can feel in bone before the fever comes. He favours hygiene and proportion, clean hands, open air, light at the right hour. Under his sign, remedies carry humility. Diagnoses admit what they don't know. Convalescence is honoured as labour. He keeps company with memory that sings. From springs that remember hoof and wing, 9 voices rise and divide work between them. Epic and history, tragedy and comedy, hymn and dance, love, lyric, and astronomy. They tint the air with exactness. A singer descending from that ridge doesn't invent, they align. The measure he loves in music, he loves in law. No ornament that can't hold weight. No verdict that can't stand daylight. He wears laurel because a chase once taught him a boundary. Beauty asked for distance and received honour instead. Since then, victory on his days smells of leaves, not smoke. His unhurrying light walks beside another brightness that prefers shadowed path and silver edge. She moves where tree and rock agree to keep secrets, where track is a sentence you read with your whole body. Bow unshowy, quiver quiet, she is the clean line pendant between use and harm. The wild knows her as sanctuary and as rule. Under her gaze, groves acquire their no, springs acquire their not now. Hillsides grow signs invisible to greed. Rest, recovery, let alone. She teaches precision the way dawn teaches colour. Gradual, relentless. Footfalls land exactly, aim follows ethics before it follows appetite. Cities come to her when their borders soften. She answers with green belts and set-asides. With seasons when taking is wrong, because taking would break the year. In the night she walks the perimeters nobody else remembers until they're gone. Her light doesn't flatter, it reveals. Under it, vows become audible to the person who made them. Together the twins harden noon and soften midnight. He keeps the square honest, she keeps the forest unafraid. He cures by measure, she heals by distance. He tells the centre how to sing, she reminds the edge how to breathe. If his priesthood learns to wash and count, hers learns to step lightly and watch for eyes in the brush that aren't hostile, just sovereign. In their wake, clinics and theatres thrive. The first because health needs ritual, the second because truth sometimes needs costume. Along colonnades, you'll see their emblems etched where anyone can borrow courage without admission. Lyre, laurel, bow, torch. At crossroads, pillars stand with simple inscriptions. Keep left for water, right for herbs. Leave offerings here for safe passage. No traps beyond this line. None of it is decoration. It's infrastructure. Under the Clarity's tutelage, medicine grew from wish into craft. A staff crowned by a coiled intelligence marks its precincts, a serpent that remembers how shedding becomes survival. The oath taken there is plain and stubborn. Help. Do not harm, keep counsel. Admit doubt. Prefer the long fix over the quick thrill. On those floors, diagnosis starts with listening. The best tools are light, soap, time, and notes written legibly. Wonders happen, but they are domesticated wonders, as fevers turning, bones knitting, breath returning, quietly celebrated with broth and opened windows. Music stands beside medicine like a sister vacation. The same numbers that make a lyre sing make a heartbeat steady. A city that funds the chorus and the clinic in the same budget is a city he smiles upon. At dusk on his days, a chorus warms the square. At dawn on hers, the perimeter is walked and trash hauled out of places that can't speak for themselves. 2 kinds of sanitation, 1 ethic. Meanwhile, the sea keeps talking in its deliberate dialect. He of the trident likes a pier with good manners and a fleet that sails for trade as often as for show. He encourages lantern codes friends can read from miles away and forbids the kind of piracy that dresses as patriotism. He has a soft spot for lighthouse keepers and pilots, for people who memorize rocks at 30 fathoms and give that knowledge away so strangers won't learn it the hard way. He approves of shipwrights who refuse shortcuts. He does not forgive harbours that dump filth and call it fate. He adjusts the sandbar to say no until the lesson holds. You will find the three of them, sea, sun, moon, holding a triangle around any coast that intends to stay. Fisherfolk leave a plate on a flat stone and get home more often. Musicians bring a flute aboard and the wind behaves. Rangers walk paths at night and temptations lose their nerve. Cities that face water hold festivals that start at the quay and end under plane trees, torches passing from hand to hand without dropping ash. Trade routes become culture routes. Songs learn foreign words and stay true to themselves, recipes migrate, so do courtesies. They have their corrections. When hubris builds a key into a reef's throat, storms make a syllabus. When prophecy is used as a cudgel, the oracle goes silent until questions learn please. When hunting is confused with harvest, she empties the forest of footprints and all anyone can catch is humility. Corrections are not malice, they are maintenance. Their symbols aren't relics, they're operating manuals. The trident says, split the problem, surface, current, depth, and address each without pretending they're the same. The lyre says, tune before you play, retune when the room changes. The laurel says, let victory smell like restraint. The bow says, hold your breath, then release, don't yank. The silver torch says, carry light that doesn't scorch, guide, don't blind. Their festivals are good places to sleep near. For him, boats garlanded with rope and rosemary drift in a slow parade, bells answering one another across water. Nets are mended in public so that mending becomes proud. For the bright one, processions walk in long measured lines, laurels tapping shoulders, songs calibrated to fit streets. A physician ties a ribbon on a clinic door and promises another year of honesty. For the huntress, lanterns move along the edge of town like a necklace around a throat. Gates to groves swing open for a few carefully kept hours. Offerings of water and bread are left for travellers returning by the long path, no questions asked. Down in ordinary rooms, their work looks like habits. A nurse opens a window before dawn. Sun invited, air changed. A forester tacks a hand-painted sign on a trail. No fires past this line, thank you. A boat owner scratches a notch on the tiller at the right angle for home harbour. The hand that finds it in fog blesses whoever made that notch. A violinist wipes rosin from strings and the world sighs. A line cook puts a lemon on the fish because salt alone is a blunt argument. A night watch walks the perimeter without drama and writes a note about a broken fence board that'll be fixed before dark. A harbour master learns one more dialect of weather and adds it to the ledger of better guesses. On the mountain they keep their hours. The sea god runs a finger along the coast and smooths a wrinkle he doesn't like. Somewhere far off a mariner recognises mercy and doesn't call it luck. The Archer of Light checks a sundial and a calendar and whispers a line into the ear of someone composing a law. The huntress walks past a window where someone sits awake with worry and lends the room the kind of quiet in which a decision can choose its better self. If you're measuring whether the world is tended while you sleep, the horizon has a steward, the day has an editor, the night has a ranger. They do not need applause, they need you to keep their rules with the uncomplicated relief rules are meant to give. Tomorrow will bring the quick-footed one who stitches markets and mountain shrines into the same map, and the wine-bringer who turns groups into communities. After that, the cool lord underground who keeps endings clean and returns names to silence without malice. For now, listen to the harbour's low clink, the clinic's soft hush, the grove's hush deeper still. Breathe with the steady tempo they set, in with the tide, out with the tide, in with the measure, out with the aim, in with the silver, out with the dark. The mountain nods, the sea agrees, the path to sleep is clear and lit. The mountain tilts toward company. After the clean edge of hunt and the measured gold of song, the council opens the doors and lets the roads in. Dust, rumour, bargains, laughter, the news a horizon brings when you walk toward it. A quick brightness steps over the threshold as if thresholds were his idea. He carries the colour of morning on a traveller's hat and the ease of a smile that negotiates without surrendering anything important. In his hand is a staff that persuades quarrel into sleep, the twin serpents not fighting, but agreeing to spiral around a common line. He is the breath between places, the handshake that makes the place safe. Boot soles know him first, cobbles that remember sandals, ruts polished by carts, slate steps up temple hills. He is the friend of feet and the patron of errands that matter. If a path needs a marker, he sets a pile of stones and calls it enough. If a message needs to arrive unbroken, he wraps it in speed and discretion. He is the reason markets feel like temples, and temples like crossroads. He understands that sacredness becomes real at the points where lives meet with rules. His altars stand at doors and at milestones, humble and effective. You pass, you nod, the day blesses you back. He is not naive. Where goods travel, so do temptations. He's seen a scale with a finger on it and a grin that asks to be forgiven in advance. He also knows how to fix a scale without breaking a hand. He keeps the ledger of grace and the ledger of consequence side by side and does not let either run out of ink. Traders who learn his manners prosper, weigh right, measure plain, and name the price once and keep to it. Thieves who pretend to be clever forget that cleverness without courtesy is just noise. He laughs sometimes when they fall into pits they meant for others. Then he hauls them out and offers a job carrying messages until they learn distance without deceit. In his precinct, words earn their bread. He likes a sentence that lands true and refuses flattery in any language. He is the sponsor of translators and the guardian of jokes that travel without cruelty. He blesses the first letter of a contract and the last fold of a letter home. He also minds dreams that carry news, and he's gentle with those who wake because of them. A whisper at the edge of sleep that turns dread into information. That's him too. If you've ever walked faster after a sudden certainty that you'd missed something and found it waiting at the next corner, you've borrowed his attention. He keeps company with luck, not the reckless kind, the practice kind. You prepare, you set out, you head for the useful wind. Then he tilts the day half a degree, and a door that would have been closed is ajar. His symbols are instructions. The winged sandals say, "Move lightly, but move." The wide-brimmed hat says, "Shade your thought as well as your face." The staff says, "Argue once, then reconcile." Even the small statues at crossroads, unadorned, often smoothed by the handprints, teach. Bless the hinge, not just the hall. Follow him through a city done right and you see his work everywhere. Border stones respected, shopkeepers who choreograph their stalls so conversation flows, couriers who know alley winds like sailors know tide, judges who allow travel time between verdict and penalty so apology can arrive first, porters with music in their steps, shutters that open for fresh air and never for malice. In such places the map itself feels friendly, and the distance between homes and hopes is made into path rather than obstacle. He does not travel alone. Where roads braid into crowds and language tilts toward chorus, another presence rises, cool and wild at once. Ivy writes its dark alphabet up columns. Drums find a low human tempo. The air fills with the fragrance of fruit that has learned how to be generous properly. He is not chaos. He is release with rules, ecstasy with engineering. Wine is the emblem, yes, but in his house it is never raw. It is cut with water, married to conversation, chaperoned by song, and put to work turning gatherings into communities. He arrives late on purpose, like a guest that rescues a dull party by being exactly what everyone needed and nobody wanted to admit. He puts a mask in your hand and says, "Try on the safer version of your courage." He opens a closet and shows a city its roles, the law that wobbled, the heart that hid, the envy that lied, then gives them scripts that end in knowledge rather than in fire. That is theatre, a licensed riot with exits. Under his festivals, a city rehearses honesty and comes home intact. He keeps a special fondness for those who make choruses move as one voice without erasing any throat. When the hymn answers the hymn, civility learns to dance. He prefers ivy because it stays green when seasons sulk. He prefers the thyrsus, fennel staff, pine cone bright, because it looks like a weapon and is not. His punishments are tailored to the lie told. When contempt sneers at what is tender, he sends tenderness in numbers and watches contempt trip. When meanness puts on severity and calls it virtue, he gives it a night with a mirror and drums, and it learns what severity really costs. When arrogance refuses to let go, he lets it exhaust itself publicly. The morning after, humility comes in with bread and the city starts over. He is not kind to cruelty, but he is unwilling to waste souls. That is his wildness. He wants everyone back. He knows the edge where joy falls into harm. He posted signs there. He posts them still. Water with wine. Song with silence. Mask off at dawn. His priests are ushers as much as celebrants. They open gates and close them, counting carefully. They keep eyes on the corners because release tempts opportunists, and his house has no patience for injuries disguised as revelry. The grape is a teacher. Vine pruned on time bears better. Vine left to vanities strangles its own trellis. He prunes with a gentle blade, he prunes. Watch the two of them, road and wine, negotiate the square. The messenger ensures the cup isn't poisoned, and the cart of olives reaches the theatre on time. The wine-bearer ensures the market doesn't turn into a court and that the court occasionally attends a play. Together they keep a city porous without letting it leak. One draws chalk lines on the ground, the other writes laughter inside them. One stamps passports, the other stamps tickets. Both defend the doors. Their feasts answer different hungers. At the crossroads, a heap of stones and a sprig of laurel gather notes from travellers in graphite. Each line a tiny promise. We'll be back. We made it. Turn left for clean water. A boy with a flute. No, not that word. A player with a flute. Tries a melody, and the wind thumbs through it approvingly. At the theatre hill, garlands go up across rows. Wine bowls circulate diluted and dignified. Masks hang on pegs waiting to tell truths too sharp for bare faces. The city's calendar doesn't feel like an invention. It feels like a heartbeat. In ordinary rooms, their work is smaller and indispensable. A courier checks directions twice and saves a day. A clerk rewrites a sign so it is clear to strangers and kindness becomes policy. A barista. There were amphorae once, now there are cups. Draws a line of foam that makes someone feel seen and chooses a playlist that keeps the table debate generous. A sommelier pours the water first. A stage manager fixes a rope and prevents a fall. Later the applause belongs to someone else and they smile anyway. A mediator puts a bowl of fruit on the table before the hard conversation begins, and the sugar does its silent arithmetic. Lost keys are found where the light is better because someone thought to move the lamp. These are temple acts without incense. They understand money and meaning equally. The quick-footed one knits markets to mercy. A coin box near a shrine that funds a public bench. A fee waived because someone's day was already too expensive. A fair price posted in numbers big enough for tired eyes to read. The wine giver converts surplus into celebration, showing a neighbourhood how to turn enough into together, without sliding into waste. He is a master of thresholds. He is a master of transformations. Between them they turn mine into ours and send everyone home intact. Their corrections are precise. When a shopkeeper cheats measures and calls it survival, the messenger introduces him to 3 new customers who count, and a tax officer who can do math. When a gathering tries to become a mob, The vine-bearer withdraws the rhythm, and the courage goes out of the wrong plan. When gossip pretends to be news, the staff taps the floor and the room remembers adults are present. When fashion forgets to be fun, Ivy finds a column and shames it gently until it becomes lovely again. Their symbols continue to be manuals rather than mascots. The pillar with 2 snakes and wings says, "Negotiate, don't escalate, and quit while the piece is fresh." The small stone heap with a face says, "Leave directions, someone like you will need them." The mask says, "Say it with art so nobody has to bleed." The cup says, "Mix it, always mix it, pleasure with prudence." The ivy says, "Cling to what deserves it, not what merely offers a place to climb." The fennel staff says, "Flourish without stabbing." The world is kinder when they are obeyed. Borders are real and friendly. Roads are open and honest. Markets are correct and lively. Theatres tell the truth and then bow. Taverns close at an hour that makes tomorrow possible. Lovers meet under lamplight and walk home instead of making speeches in the street. A friend's laugh is a passport. A song learned in one language plays well in another. The rain arrives on a festival night and only improves it. Up on the mountain, they report back the way colleagues do after doing different shifts in the same city. The messenger drops a pouch full of treaties, receipts, names, grievances, jokes. The wine giver drops a coil of ivy in a programme from a play that salvaged a policy. The thunderer reads, smiles once and files both in the drawer labelled, "Keeps us human." The Queen of Vows notes which oaths were renewed informally and which need ceremony. The hearth adds wood, the field sends bread, the smith oils hinges, the bright-eyed strategist circles 2 dates on the calendar and writes, "Review traffic and fund chorus" in a margin. The sea remarks that trade winds behaved. The huntress notes that the park's edge was respected. Everything participates. If you need lullabies made of logistics, they provide them. Street lamps blink on in sequence. Ferries run on time because tide pages were read. Wayfinding signs and clinics point with confidence and kindness. Ticket windows that used to be metal now have wooden plants. The queue breathes easier. A public square holds a free concert that doesn't keep anyone trapped. Exits are obvious. The night folds without incident. Somewhere, a messenger hangs their hat, slides the staff into the umbrella stand and stretches calves that carried good news. Somewhere else, a director checks locks, thanks the empty seats, and leaves a note to mop the stage before morning sun turns dust to glitter. You can sleep on a city like that. The doors have gods at them, not guards only. The wine is watered just right. The laughter keeps secrets. The trains, if you have them, sing with a tempo that reassures. If you wake and worry, a whisper near the hinge will remind you the map still holds. The story kept its kindness. The cup was put away washed. Tomorrow the circle will turn toward the cool precinct beneath everything. The keeper of boundaries no light reaches, the gardener of endings, the one who returns names to quiet without insult. He will not rush. He never does. Before we go there, let the roads and the songs have the last word tonight. Messages delivered, masks hung, cups rinsed, lamps low. Breathe with the rhythm they set. Step, step, arrive, pour, speak, rest. The mountain approves. The city listens to its own heart and finds it steady. You're allowed to drift. The council dimmed the lamps and turned to the cool precinct under everything, the quiet country where endings are kept tidy and beginnings are stored like seeds. No trumpet, no glare, a gate of rock and shadow stood where the mountain's long stare runs out, and a breeze moved that wasn't air at all. It was memory remembering to be gentle. He comes without spectacle. He wears authority like a well-cut coat and speaks rarely. But when he does, noise organize. Call him the keeper below, the treasure of silence, the one whose realm is not punishment but proportion. Rich in the old sense, Pluton, because every harvest, every vein of metal, every root-fed promise starts in the dark he mines. Above, crowns perform. Below, accounts are settled and names rest without insult. His house has rules that feel like clean stone underfoot. The first is boundary. You arrive because you're finished. You stay because the living have work to do elsewhere. The second is courtesy. Guests are received, not chased. A ferryman rows with the patience of seasons. A three-headed hound dozes by the gate, awake in all the ways that matter, content when boundaries are kept. Judges sit at a plain table, no dais, no intimidation, listening for balance rather than blame. They weigh lives like grain, measure, not rumour, and send each story to its fitting field. The country itself is arranged like a conscience. Closest to the gate stretches a meadow of pale flowers, asphodel that neither flatter nor accuse. Most souls walk there, a mind smoothing from the tightness of effort into something rounder. Farther in, where river light bends into gold, lie fields for the unusually steadfast Elysian, work and joy braided so well they've forgotten where one ends. Beyond boundaries you do not accidentally reach. A pit drops out of sight where betrayal and ruin are dismantled into lesson until nothing sharp is left. Tartarus, not theatre, repair by severity. None of this is chaos, it is carpentry. 5 rivers lace the realm like veins. One is sighing, Acheron, the crossing water where Hermes brings those who have finished with breath. One is lament, Cocytus, the echo that drains grievance of its poison so memory can keep what's useful. One burns in its own way, Phlegethon, consuming only what clings too hard. One is night, Lethe, cool on the tongue, washing the mind free of burdens it cannot use any more. And one is sacred, Styx, black and binding. Even the high thunder swears by, when a promise must be nailed to reality. You do not drink without being asked. You do not swear without being certain. He does not rule alone. A queen sits with him, not borrowed, not hostage, but sovereign in a different key, the returner, the law of seasons in person. When she lifts her hand, the earth above imitates. Fields rest, fields wake, lamps burn at dusk because someone decided they should. She isn't a story about loss. She is a syllabus about rhythm. Her smile is rare and decisive. She owns the colour that seeds understand when they decide inside themselves to rise. At their threshold, a triple-faced watcher minds the crossings, door, path, brink, seeing forward and back at once, carrying torches that refuse to flatter. Night herself visits here sometimes, Nyx, ancestral and unarguable. The only reply is deference. Sleep makes his home just inside the border. Hypnos, with a house of poplar and quiet water. He moves with an economy that relaxes cities. Lids lower, jaw unclenches, error knits itself into lesson. His kin carry dreams to the living in shapes they know how to read. One paints visits in human faces, one in beasts and weather, one in lovely nonsense whose truth arrives later. The boundary between gone and resting is kept humane by their craft. Hermes keeps a second office below, guide of souls, equal parts usher and confidant. No coin can buy his kindness, it's included in the design. He touches a shoulder with a hand that smells like roads and lets urgency drop its last disguise. Conversation on that path is simple, gratitude for work, surprise at how light ache becomes when you set it down, a name spoken aloud once more and then folded correctly. He leaves you at the river with a nod that says, "You did enough." The undercountry loves rites because rites keep panic out of rooms that don't need it. Above, the living make it easier. A stone laid right, a name said clearly, salt, smoke, water, honey. Portions, not spectacle. A coin tucked respectfully so fair doesn't turn into worry. Garlands brought on anniversaries that aren't printed anywhere but heart. Such gestures are not bribes. They're handles the living can hold while the hand learns to open. Below, the response is professionalism. The list is kept, the gate is minded. The judges aren't swayed by tears or cruelty. The fields receive exactly as much story as they can grow. He's not dark in the way lantern-scared men say. He is sober. He refuses flattery, panic, and to-do lists. He dislikes doors left ajar on purpose. He detests oath-breaking. The Styx burns that kind of paper from the inside. When heroes arrive by design rather than deadline, asking for exceptions, he listens like a ledger learns patience, without malice, without eagerness. Sometimes a special case is a principle testing its edges. Sometimes it's a vanity looking for a mirror. He knows the difference and answers accordingly. Orpheus sang and nearly rearranged the rule. Nearly as a kind of lesson too, an above-ground song became better for the loss. Look how the underworld supports the living. Miners learn to ask permission of the seam and seal their shafts with thanks. They sleep longer. Lawmakers write penalties with the hush of the asphodel in mind. The laws breathe better. Physicians studying the silent learn to bow before they learn to cut. Their hands shake less. Judges above imitate the procedure below, names first, deeds next, sentence last. So verdicts resemble bridges instead of hammers. The hearth-keeper pours a few drops on the floor before lighting the evening fire. Smoke rises straighter. The rich below is not coin, it's equilibrium. He keeps carefully what surfaces would waste. Compost of lives, mulch of efforts, a storehouse of wisdom nobody living had time to organize. Patrons who understood this built tombs that behaved, open to sky, planted with cypress, perched above streets where passers-by could read and remember. Names are the underworld's favourite currency. Speaking them is how the living deposit interest that pays back as calm. Walking his courts changes your posture. Spectacle falls off like a heavy coat. You stand the way a craftsman stands, present, unafraid. The Queen shows you a table where seasons sit at appointed places. You recognise the chairs. A stern but kind figure asks 3 questions. Where were you loyal? What did you repair? Who got bread because you were alive? That is all. Then you are sent where such answers grow into their next shape. Cerberus, let's say the gatekeeper, lifts one head to acknowledge you and rests the others because you are announced properly. The ferryman rows with an oar that never splashes wrong. The judges confer in low voices you can't hear, because you don't need to. The kindly ones patrol the edges, not to shred as they did before Athens civilized them, but to ensure oaths breathe and stay clean. Even their anger is domestic now. It polishes thresholds. The rivers correct gently unless asked to correct hard. Lethe waits like a lake at evening, dissolving pride and grievance into something that won't hurt when carried. Many refuse at first. Many return when they discover remembrance can become a trap. Mnemosyne, the mother of muses, memory itself, keeps a spring for those assigned to sing above again. Drink that one, and your work will recall exactitude others need. Balance is maintained. One stream to lighten, one to sharpen, both watched, neither forced. His symbols are sober manuals, a key, not triumph closure, a cornucopia, not glitter, the simple fullness that dark makes possible. A staff, not threat, jurisdiction. A black ram at the right time because seriousness deserves markers. Pomegranates appear in stories, yes, but even there the lesson is contract. What you eat binds you. Choose with ceremonial care. Seeds know it, seasons obey it, so do oaths. The underworld keeps promises like that because it is made of them. Festivals in his honour are appropriately quiet and early. Lamps, not torches. Bread and salt, not excess. People whisper names over cups of dark wine cut with water and leave in pairs, calmer than they arrived, kinder to the idea that endings are part of competence. Plays sometimes visit his country too, tragedies that let cities kneel, then stand without inventing an enemy, comedies that return a populace to daylight with their sharpness softened. He approves of both when they end on time. You meet his work every day if you look where infrastructure hides. A cemetery designed with paths and benches and birds rather than fences that scowl. That's his aesthetic, filtered through civic sense. A hospital corridor painted in colours that make waiting bearable. A morgue where labels are correct and voices are low. A court that pauses after sentencing so families can breathe. His effect by collaboration. A will written clearly and signed before thunder talks. His whisper in your good ear. A city that names its past wrongs in plain language and then repairs something specific. His smile. Barely. He has his corrections. Gold buried to cheat the world loses its value grain by grain. Names erased have a way of being written in large letters somewhere inconvenient. False mediums who turn grief into theatre find their lamps sputter out in front of a draught nobody else feels. People who refuse all ritual learn the hard way that the heart likes handles. They come back to the least performative ones. Water, words, a walk to a stone, and the underworld forgives at once. The sleep good for you comes from this precinct as much as from the high mountain. When Hypnos passes by your door tonight, he'll close the argument gently, tuck the unanswered question under your pillow with a note. Not now. Dreams may visit, carrying messages stamped by the different offices. One in the voice you most trust, one in the shape of a storm you'll know as choice when you wake, one too beautiful to explain but vivid enough to soften your day. If a nightmare insists, it's often the underworld's version of a sticky note. Fix the hinge, call your friend, make the appointment. The next night the message won't need to shout. Everything about this realm conspires to make the living above behave better. Knowing the gate is kept makes courage honest. Risks count because waste is accounted for. Knowing the ledger is fair makes mercy braver. You can forgive without fear of being fooled by the universe because the universe isn't fooled. Knowing your name will be filed among names and not among numbers encourages you to build the sort of life that reads easily when it's read aloud. He doesn't reject celebration. He regulates it. Wine upstairs is safer because water flows beside it here. Markets are cleaner because scales are true here. Armies hesitate because this house is real and counted. Lovers promise more carefully because the Styx has witnesses. Parents, no, we won't use that word, households, write instructions that prevent chaos because they visited, in their minds, the office where lost time is audited and returned as wisdom rather than regret. When the council on the mountain adjourns, a file of deities descends the long stairs in their thoughts, leaving offerings at each lander. A laurel sprag, a cup set down, emptied, washed. A folded paper with the names of those they must not forget to favour. A simple coin, not payment. Gratitude. The queen below accepts them without courtliness. The king files them without drama. The torches on both sides of the gate nod to one another. Partners who will never trade places but always share work. If your eyelids are heavy now, it's because this realm's cadence is the body's favourite. Inhale, boundary. Exhale, release. Inhale, memory. Exhale, rest. The keeper of below is on duty. The ferryman's oar is lifted and set with a sound like reassurance. The hound snores a little. Hypnos is already walking the street, trimming a few worries with professional calm. The mountain sleeps better because this office never does. Tomorrow will gather the circle, storm, sea, mind, craft, harvest, hearth, vow, hunt, song, road, revel, boundary into one last panorama, A map you can carry even with your eyes closed. For tonight, accept the underworld's oldest gift. Permission to stop. Lay down the tools. Keep your name. Let the dark do its careful work while you are deliberately, beautifully unavailable. Dawn lifts its first pale coin over the mountain, and the Pantheon takes up its posts like a crew that knows the ship. The high chair does not creak. It never does. Thunder stays in its scabbard. Order hums, quiet and sure, as if a loom has already been threaded before the day asks for cloth. At the threshold, a hand finds a flint and answers the oldest instruction. Flame stands up without boasting. The room remembers its manners. Bread anticipates heat. A pot accepts water like a promise. This is how the morning signs its name. The hearth says begin, and the vow-keeper nods. Curtains open because light counts as witness. In the square, stones that have learned footsteps wake to news. The quick-footed one comes early, hat shading thought as much as brow, staff twined with two reconciled serpents. He checks the wayfinding, rewrites a sign with one clearer arrow, rescues a letter from a puddle and puts jokes where malice was trying to grow. His miles are blessings disguised as errands. Around him, stalls become a grammar. Weight honest, measure plain. Price is large enough for tired eyes to read. Ivy is still dream dark on the theatre hill, but the wine bearer is awake too, counting cups and watering kindness so it won't turn into harm later. Ships lean on their lines out at the quay like animals waiting for a gate to lift. The sea, which likes discipline, inhales to a working tide. The trident wielder draws a small line nowhere the eye can see, and everywhere the keel can feel, a corridor of permission. Lanterns wink a code pilots learned from their grandparents, and a gull laughs once approving spruce, pitch, and salt trade recipes. Somebody remembers to throw back the first fish. A bell answers, by noon the square belongs to clarity. A lyre tests the air, the city's pulse steadies to it. The Archer of Light walks the colonnade, eyes measuring shadow the way a physician measures risk. He ties a ribbon on a clinic door and leaves a sentence behind. Open windows, wash hands, write legibly, ask again. At the spring above town, his 9 artisans rinse their reeds and divide the morning into disciplines. History here, dance there. Astronomy where the roof catches the sky just right. Down the street, the strategos of Olive Eyes unfolds a plan over a slate and asks simple questions. What are we building? Where will it break? Who needs this most? She places an olive branch on the table when ambition begins to talk louder than usefulness. She likes maps that leave room for trees. In the shade of a workshop, stubborn metal turns cooperative under the anvil's persuasion. The smith's limp sets the tempo. The bellows breathe like a healthy lung. Hinges forget how to complain. Locks learn to be loyal and not vain. Armour becomes story. Cities and constellations hammered into depth so that courage remembers it serves something larger than itself. He laughs once when a joint fits true. The sound is an oath fulfilled. Outside, a gate opens and closes as if it had practiced all night. At the edge of town, lane to grove. Silver moves in strips through shade. The huntress patrols quiet borders. Her bow is unromantic, it is accurate. She posts signs that only those who need them can see. Not now, not here. Rest this side. Take over there. Leave tracks that teach, not tracks that take. Rangers memorize the script and repeat it without speeches. A fox slips by with the courtesy of a neighbour who pays rent on time. Springs hold their temperature the way a good temper holds a blade. The fields breathe like a book turning its own pages. Furrows keep their parallel like choir lines. Grain leans towards scythes that were sharpened with respect, not hurry. The giver of harvest walks the ridges with her hand low, counting promise, counting restraint. She likes barns that close with a bar anyone can lift and granaries with neat chalk on the door. stores, shares, seed. She touches a vine and it remembers pruning is love. She touches a ledger and it remembers charity is math. In a lane, a winnowing fan stops. Chaff lifts and drifts like a small instruction. Let go of what feeds nothing. The vow-keeper spends midday reviewing decent paperwork. She is not dazzled by diadems. She is pleased by accurate dates. Under her eye, processions shrink to the size that fits truth. Couples trade rings like tools, not trophies. Registries spell names correctly. Magistrates swear and mean it. She permits wrath when it guards integrity. She bans theatre when it tries to impersonate fidelity. Peacocks on the eaves blink in agreement. Their eyes store gossip and return only evidence. The red god of heat and iron spine circles at a distance like weather, trained to salute. He is allowed a drill, not a parade. Under orders he is beautiful. A wall holds. A breach becomes a gate. Strength lands exactly where it was paid to land. He drinks water first and wine afterward, because someone taught him the schedule. He knows which street to avoid at dusk. In the noise of a training ground, he hears a cadence he did not invent, the city's promise to itself. At the market's far side, perfume stitches strangers into conversation. Foam-born presence passes, turning friction into grace, reminding hands to touch like vows, not theft, reminding eyes to look like invitations, not claims. She arranges floating mercies, gentler sentences, kinder colours, a bench in shade, so that the last hard feelings from winter can see where to leave. When envy tries to perform austerity, she raises an eyebrow and gives austerity a pair of flowers to hold until it remembers humility. Masks are hung on pegs nearby for later. Truth sometimes benefits from costume, and she loans those generously on the wine-bearer's word. All day the messenger stitches the map, road to shop, court to grove, key to clinic, altar to stage, like a tailor who loves seams more than sleeves. He carries a pouch that holds receipts and riddles, and one rolled-up treaty secured with twine. He delivers dream fragments to the right pillowcases as insurance against bad habits. He leaves cairns where they matter, and removes them where they confused. He likes a door that opens for strangers and not for malice. If he finds the opposite, he edits the hinges. The world above is busy but never frantic. When a verdict must be signed, the thunderer leans forward and drops a single precise instruction. The paper sharpens into law without a show. When a quarrel threatens to hire knives, the staff with snakes taps the floor and decides that the argument wants sleep, not apocalypse. When a harbour brags too soon, the sea hums a correction. Ropes are checked. Boast becomes competence. Corrections here are mercies that know their jobs. Beneath it all, the cool office underground keeps accounts like a poet who distrusts adjectives. A name arrives, folded in silence. A ferryman rows without commentary. A gatekeeper yawns 3 times and chooses not to rise because the procedure is being executed properly. A queen's hand moves and above-ground lamps remember to wait for dusk. Judges weigh lives without nostalgia and without cruelty. Rivers keep their specializations. Sigh, lament, burn, forget, bind. Memory and forgetting exchange nods at the border, like colleagues at shift change. By late afternoon, the theatre breathes out first applause. Choruses assemble with the seriousness of bakers. The wine is cut, the masks are tied, the exits are obvious. A comedy teaches a truth too sharp for bare faces. A tragedy teaches a tenderness too hard for daylight. The city takes both lessons and doesn't spill them on the way home. Under the benches, Ivy finds a seam and fills it. Up near the oculus, the archer of light makes the last adjustments. Shadows take their places like ensemble cast. Evening returns power to rooms. Torches come on one by one at the right height for hands. The hearth repeats its morning sentence. Continue. Flour becomes crust. Onions become kindness. Spoons find bowls without metal complaining. A cup travels around the circle with water first, then wine, an order learned from the god who refuses to let joy skip steps. In many houses, an extra plate appears with no name on it. Sometimes it is eaten, sometimes not. Either way, the house keeps score the right way. At second lamp, the vow-keeper visits quietly. A doorframe is touched. A ring gleams in lamplight that corrects vanity into tenderness. A ledger is closed for the night and the key is put where memory can find it at dawn. She takes nothing, she returns composure tied with thread. Outside, the olive strategist walks past a wall and leaves behind, with 3 finger taps, a working repair schedule. Someone inside wakes tomorrow and calls it their own idea. Night in the grove is a sweep of satin. The huntress lets the perimeter breathe. A lantern procession moves at the town's edge without drums, only footfall and crickets. A hand-lettered sign near a spring says "Thank you," without insisting on who should feel it. Owls annotate the minutes. In the lanes back to the square, playbills tacked on posts flutter once, as if they already knew tomorrow's weather. When the city sleeps correctly, the pantheon allows itself to be smaller. They become the verbs they taught. Welcome, weigh, build, mend, tune, aim, patrol, listen, ferry, release. The thunderer sleeps in his chair because the chair is really a switchboard. The sea leans its ear to the coast and hears through stone the soft applause of tides meeting limits. The smith banks coals so nobody has to start from nothing at dawn. The bright-eyed one leaves chalk lines on a table and a sprig of olive beside them. The wine-bearer locks the last gate to the hill, humming a tune that teaches feet to remember moderation tomorrow. The messenger does his last lap and hangs the staff on a hook that used to be for umbrellas and now is for peace. Underneath, Hypnos steps barefoot across thresholds with a professional's modesty. He closes cupboards of thought. He lowers voices to a key that flatters dreams. He decides which door a message should use if it must arrive. A dream shaped like a person you trust sits at the foot of the bed and says a sentence you'll remember at breakfast. Another shaped like weather tests a window and leaves. A third is loveliness for its own sake, which is its own medicine. If a nightmare insists, the underworld labels it. Fix the hinge, make the call, drink water. Tomorrow, write the thing down. At the extreme edges of the map, the less talked about presences keep their posts. Fortune lays her hand lightly where preparation has been honest. Victory perches only on shoulders that carried others first. Retribution oils the balance so it will not stick when asked to lean. The fates, who have always been both near and very far, measure without hurry. Their thread is not threat, it is continuity given shape. Scissors move when they must, never sooner, never for show. If the world wakes gentler after this, 'tis because the great family work the night like artisans. Their symbols on walls and altars are not mascots, they are manuals still. The key that says close properly. The cornucopia that says enough is architecture, not accident. The owl that says look twice. The trident that says separate surface from current from depth. The laurel that says win without noise. The torch that says carry light that doesn't burn. The staff that says argue once, reconcile often. The bow that says breathe then release. Hand and kept. These turn thunder into policy, wind into schedule, feeling into form. What remains is a map you can hold with your eyes closed. At the top, restraint with lightning. At the side, vows like scaffolding. At the centre, a flame that is not for spectacle. Around it, harvest measured. Craft patient. Strategy exact. Beauty persuasive. Strength obedient, sea honest, song precise, hunt protective, road generous, revelry engineered, boundary impeccable. Beneath, the office that files endings, under kept. Between every point, the messenger's stitches. Across the whole, Ivy's mercy. You do not have to remember who carries which emblem when you wake. The habits will remember for you. Put water on first, open a window, weigh fairly, pay on time, build to last. Leave directions, share bread, keep a clean tool, close the gate gently. Mix the wine, lock at a decent hour. Plant with patience, write names clearly. Speak truth with art when it would bruise without it. Forgive with gates, promise with the river in mind. If you miss one, try again tomorrow. There is always a tomorrow so long as the mountain keeps its crew. The lamp can go low now. The olive outside the window moves once and settles. Somewhere a boat clears the headland and finds the lane in the dark it meant to find. Somewhere else, a hinge does not squeal because oil met metal at the right hour. In another room, a ledger is shut with clean hands. Under stone, a ferryman lifts and dips and lifts again. The oar's rhythm says proportion. Above stone, the singer of sunlight will come back when the script says curtain up. Between those two certainties is sleep, which belongs to you. Breathe with the measure the gods themselves keep. In on welcome, out on guard, in on plenty, out on share, in on courage, out on calm. The mountain approves. The harbours, hills, courts and kitchens that learned its grammar hum under your window like a lullaby disguised as infrastructure. Let the pantheon hold its shift while you relinquish yours. You're not abandoning the world, you're honouring the part of it that works best when eyes are closed.